to order. Could we have a roll call?
Judy Corser. Oh, do you want me?
Go ahead.
Judy Corser.
Here.
Mark Harrington.
Here.
Joe Hayberger. Tim King.
Here.
Richard Kuntz.
Here.
Carl McGookie. David Miller.
Here.
William Siemens.
Here.
Kevin Zier. Mike Zuloff.
Thank you. We have minutes probably from
January and April.
January and April. I believe I owe minutes from one of those two. I think I owe February minutes. And who would have March minutes? Were you here?
No. I had missed March.
I'll talk to Kevin and see if he has those. I know I owe the one. Has everybody had the opportunity to peruse the minutes from January and April? If so,
Mr. Chair?
Motion.
I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Okay, those pass, and we'll have 2 months of minutes to review next month. New business. Do we have any new business?
I can mention, I just thought of it, their Greater Sandusky Partnership is starting a pilot program, and they're calling it Sunset Celebration on Wednesday evenings on the pier. And it's just a brief, around the hour of sunset, casual gathering for folks to watch the regatta and watch the sunset. They're going to hire some live music and performance artists. I'm thinking like magicians or jugglers. I'm not sure what that program is going to look like. And the artists were supported by a small grant from the Public Arts and Culture Commission. So we're curious to see what that looks like. It's a brand new piece of programming, and the Public Arts and Culture Commission had created a program this year it's a grant for programming, so it's for expanding or creating new types of arts and cultural programming in the city. And this is a great, way to kind of take advantage of the regatta, which is really cool to watch, and the sunsets, which are gorgeous on the pier. I think they're starting in June. I think it's June to August. I
Okay.
can't recall. I'm
Would
pretty
that be
sure it
on the
starts in June.
stage down there?
No, it'll be
or
all the way at the
down
end.
to
Yeah, much more
Marquette?
casual, just kind of a meetup sort of event, as far as I understand.
Food trucks, or do you know anything?
I don't think so. I think it's just a little bit of live music and people gathering in conversation and watching the sunset.
Watching sailboats go by.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Acting Chairman. You refer to regatta, that's just the Wednesday night sailing races from the sailing club, or?
Yes, thank you. I don't know if I'm referring to them correctly. You know much better than I do.
Yeah. Just the Wednesday night.
The weekly
Racing
Wednesday
Run by the
night.
Sailing Club.
Serious.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Old business. Looks like we have 2 sets of old business. But I guess those we have updates on, Columbus Avenue Streetscape.
Lots of updates there if you've been following that project. Recently completed and in progress, we have seen the Washington Row intersection be completed with concrete. All the east side sidewalks have been completed, so the large majority of concrete work is complete. We saw a curb go in the 100 and 200 block this last week. Now you'll see them out there creating the edges of the planters on the east side. Much of that work has been completed at Washington Row for the planting beds. So that's all, everything's going really well and tracking on time. The look ahead, we'll see continued work on those planter curbs up through the east side. They are building the roadway base for the east side for that first layer of asphalt. And so you'll see asphalt go on the east driving lane and parking lane. And then they have a little bit more road building to do. So you'll see there'll be more asphalt on both sides once they're ready to cover both sides of that. We do have light poles will start going in hopefully next week, but I know that we've got a shipping confirmation and track information. I don't know exactly where they are at this moment, but they have been shipped. They're on their way to us. So you'll see the light poles start to go up, and they'll start to pull the electric for those as well. All of the bases are in, so it's installing those light poles. So really exciting. A couple weeks out there's some site furniture we're still waiting for. They're like big cut limestone blocks to really call to the history of the limestone construction in the area. So we're waiting on those. You'll see those come in eventually here, and some electric boxes for when we want to do events on the roadway and shut down the road for, periodic events. We can hook up food trucks or vendors to those. So those are coming in a little later too. But overall, we're still tracking on time and the project's going really well. We've seen some trees go in on the west side, some of the soil coming in, and you'll see all the plantings start to come in too in the next couple weeks.
Is there a ribbon cutting event?
There's
Plan?
been some discussion about a ribbon cutting event. We don't have a date. I will keep you posted on it. I think we're going to put it a healthy way out just to, be careful about that date, and I'll keep you posted. But we haven't had a meeting around it. I think somebody organized a meeting, I'm not sure when, to discuss, so we'll see.
Mr. Chair, I
Sure.
do have two questions. First one was, with the new parking arrangements, are we looking at having any motorcycle parking directed in that area or not?
There's none in the plans for striped, but we know that there was a small bank of them up near the garage and a small bank of them up near Daly's in the corner of Water and Columbus. I was actually just talking to a friend that drives one the other day. So from the parking study, the ones up here by the courthouse were really underutilized. They were hardly ever parked, but the ones up towards Water were used a little more often. So what I'd like to do is take a look at several blocks and think if there's a couple strategic areas where we could actually spread out a few more parking spaces and see if they're better utilized that way, as opposed to like a bank of 6 or 8 of them. So that's something we're going to look at, and we know we'll be missing for a minute, but we'll get to finding a good area for a couple motorcycle parking spaces. I'd like to also see if we can find some golf cart parking spaces, because when you have a golf cart and a full-size parking space, you've got some extra land area. So I'm going to study and see if it's possible to have like a golf cart space with 2 motorcycles, if that fits within the limits of what the land area, those uses want, and maybe we could have a couple of them around downtown. That's just one idea. I haven't studied it yet.
And then the second question I had was, are we going to standardize when you have the outside seating for like alcohol and stuff like that? We used to have the gated area. Are we still going to have that imposed on the new sidewalk area? And is it going to be standardized as far as the gating and stuff like that?
It's up to each storefront owner if they want to pursue putting up fencing. We know that Daly's is intending to put their original fencing back out. I believe they're also considering expanding. A couple other restaurants are thinking about exploring what that might look like and what the design would look like. We don't require that any of fencing be standardized. We do require it go through a review process because it's in the historic district, so it has to be appropriate materials like metal or wood and not overly ornate, things that are according to the guidelines. Whether they have fencing or not is also up to the storefront owners. So for example, Ohio liquor law, it's my understanding, and I'm by no means an expert, but my understanding is with Ohio liquor law, if you want to serve alcoholic drinks in glassware at a table outside, it has to be within a bound area, like with a fence. But you could serve Dora cups outside on just a table without a fence around it. So that's kind of a decision that each of those business owners could make for themselves, that the ones that sell alcohol.
Mr. Chair, if I could make a suggestion, standardizing it might make it look much nicer for the downtown area rather than having a hodgepodge of different fencing in that area. Since we put so much money into the streetscape, it would be nice to have a standardized fencing type of look. So just an idea.
I'll note that.
I don't think that's fair to all the business owners. Some people may want it and some people may not. I don't think you should have to have it or not have to have it.
I'm not saying to have it, but if you are going to have it, it has to be a standardized type of fence. It has to look the same no matter where it's at.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
years ago, I think maybe I don't think Ms. Blair is going to remember, because I think we, maybe before her tenure, we did set some standards, some dimensional standards for fenced-in sidewalk dining areas. They haven't always been followed, but the standards were established and they were quite reasonable. It was in part a reaction to places where there just wasn't room to pass, or you'd have to run a wheelchair over a tree grate to get by or something. There were places where, I think you had 24 inches to squeeze by. So maybe revisiting that or dusting off those standards or seeing if they're still reasonable might apply. They might not be. They're probably still appropriate elsewhere with the wider sidewalks. They might even be overreach, not allowing for events and other uses. And it's clear that we did have some examples of overreach. Also, there was a tendency to pretty much rubber stamp whatever design merchants came up with. And I'm unaware of one that wasn't approved, and some of them didn't age well, shall we say. So yeah, there's a case to be made, and at least two city commissioners mentioned to me that we really ought to perhaps standardize, if not standardize the design, have some uniformity, because if you do something decrepit, let's face it, everyone suffers, right? So I think you have to balance what the merchant needs and wants with how it affects everyone else. So those just some background, giving it a more historic perspective here.
Mr. Miller.
Yeah, to weigh in on the fence situation, Judy may remember better than me, but I have a vague recollection that what Daley's had at the end is not what Daley's had in the beginning. The first iteration of the fencing was comparatively flimsy, and it seems like at one point Ka also had fencing very different than down at Daley's. But I think it has to have a certain standard of rigor, that it's not all floppity and light gauge. It needs to be substantial enough to hold up a little bit. I think that's not an unreasonable requirement. I don't know all about the uniformity. I can understand that, but just the sturdiness is something that I care about in remembering how they've developed over the years. A second question, though. At the corner, just outside across the street, there seems to be sort of two, I would describe as recumbent benches, sort of reminiscent of what you might find in a Caribbean hut on the beach kind of thing, that to me seems like it would really encourage sleeping in public. It's something that is not generally encouraged by municipalities in my experience. I don't know if that was a consideration of anybody in the design process, that you have something that looks comfortable enough to sleep on, especially if you were unhoused or unhomed or whatever. And then the construction with apparently treated lumber, are there plans that there is any cushioning or padding? And it kind of stuck out to me when I noticed that the bird droppings were accumulating. And I thought, oh, I would like to sit on a recumbent situation that is covered in, I don't know who in the city's job it is to how often clean bird crap off of.
Oh, that might be one way to stop them sleeping.
Well, I didn't know if that was the strategy, if pigeons are incorporated in the city's plan, but just curious about those points.
Those are, they're intended to be like a lounge chair, so it's a moment that's a little different than other types of seating. So I know that a friend of mine lives next door and has seen several of his neighbors out there reading books on them. So it's a little bit different of a moment. Certainly, if someone was sleeping in public inappropriately, then they would be asked to vacate those chairs. If it ends up being an issue, we can cross that bridge when we get there. We do have, there's maintenance instructions for that type of furniture from the manufacturer, which our public realm staff will have. I don't know how often they will remove, seagull droppings. We do have a lot of that in the city. It's just one of those things. So I will mention the design intent for the streetscape along the county garage is specifically done to be kind of like a mini park, because there's never going to be a business in the parking garage that's going to make that streetscape active and interesting. Whereas everywhere else, we have businesses here and there that may add fencing, tables and chairs, their own seating, flowers, things like that. Along the garage, there's no opportunity for that to happen. So that part of the streetscape is designed to kind of look like a mini park and have a little bit of a personality for that reason.
Well, let me compliment that aspect of it that I've already met there, that it's the proximities lend themselves to a conversational grouping, like 4 chairs with a coffee table in between really is very accommodating for a business discussion or any casual group discussion. I think it could lead to a great place to set your dork up and the like while you're having a conversation.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zuloff.
Yeah, with full appreciation for the validity of all those concerns, nobody's pointed out that it's a perfectly great place for sunbathing, and sunbathers usually bring their own blankets, so it'll be fine. A little bird crap under the blanket ain't gonna hurt anything. We can put up bird deterrents on the edge of the building up, or maybe we need the cooperation of the county, of course. I look forward to, seeing if it's the sunbathers displace or deter the unhoused. On a more serious note, why don't we give it a chance? Again, these are all valid concerns, but let's give it a chance. See what happens. It's not that hard, not that big of a deal to correct it, enhance it, add to it. Along the line of the desert along the parking garage, it might be a great place to even rent out 10 by 10 kiosks, booths of the merchant's own construction and design, of course, but simply say, hey, put a space there, have a presence there. It's going to be, the street is with the wider sidewalks is going to lend itself to art fairs and that sort of thing, I think, much better than it did before with the additional width. By the way, also allowing the booths to face the existing merchants instead of turning when you put a 2 rows of booths in the middle of the street, you're effectively turning the storefronts into an alleyway and kind of brushing the merchants aside. If you can kind of make the existing merchants part of the event, that's a much better arrangement. I look forward to the possibilities that the new design affords.
Are you talking about kiosks just during events downtown?
I don't know.
Permanently?
It could be semi-permanent, probably shouldn't be forever, but I can see how if someone has a concept, maybe seasonal things that meet, I wouldn't, if I lost my sunglasses, I wouldn't mind being able to pick up a pair of sunglasses in a booth seasonally. I just to pull one out of the air. I have no idea what the marketplace would support, but it would certainly just one idea for enlivening that kind of dead space.
Thank you. Not to kick a dead horse, but the design review committee will be reviewing any fencing that would be placed.
Yeah, fencing and site furniture goes through Landmarks Commission review. It's
Landmarks,
typically an administrative approval unless someone is proposing something that is not appropriate according to our historic preservation design guidelines. We do generally give a lot more leeway with non-permanent items like umbrellas, furniture, awnings, because that's where you get the chance to add a little more personality or a little more contemporary appeal. And we are very much more strict on the permanent facades and architecture in the historic district.
Thank you. Shelby Street Boat Launch Replacement Project.
I do not have an update for that at this time, and I apologize for that being on the list at the top. But if you have
Fine.
questions, I can direct them to Mr. Worley. Do you have anything? No, I think so.
That was a quick one.
Yeah, the landing. Do we have anything on that?
Yeah, so I wanted to update the group that I know I said a while ago that we were accepting bids for the landing project. We got one bid and it far exceeded what our engineer's estimate was and exceeded our budget for the project. So we decided to go a different route. We're moving forward with the design build approach for that project. It's something that we contemplated a year and a half ago when we were going through the permitting process. So we still anticipate having that contract this year. Hopefully this summer is what we're aiming for. My goal would be June or July, but we are going through the design build instead of the original design bid build approach. So that'll give us a lot more flexibility on what we can award. And the one contractor that did give us costs, that did give us a bid for the project, also told us about several ideas that they had to save costs, and that was just different construction techniques, not eliminating pieces and parts of the project.
Thank you.
So,
Anything else on Sandusky Bay Pathway?
just as an update, that project that's under construction, the Heminger to Cedar Point Drive, they are putting in, we had to get some utilities relocated from AT&T, and now they're putting in some drainage work, doing some drains down on the peninsula north of Castaway Bay. And then once the settlement and everything is done on that peninsula, which hopefully it won't take that long, then they'll be able to start building the bridge over Pipe Creek over the next week. And I know everybody has already seen the work that's being done along Cleveland Road with the temporary signals, but over the next week or two, they'll be continuing to do that to put in the storm sewers and the other utilities, and then they'll continue moving on with the pathway. They've already started grading the pathway along the old pier track, mostly behind or in front of, or however you want to look at it, the Hidden Harbor, and also behind those businesses that front on Cleveland Road as well. So they're moving along. It's slower than what they wanted because they've had to redo their schedule 3 or 4 times because of those utilities. So now they have everything relocated and where it needs to be, and hopefully we'll be seeing quite a bit of progress over the next couple months.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
That's going to be concrete or blacktop, is that correct?
That's going to be asphalt.
Asphalt, okay. I see that it's stone now, and I'm assuming it's not going to stay stone.
Yeah, they put the stone base down. They had to dig quite a bit of it out, and then they're going to come back and try to get the asphalt in segments. I don't know if they'll be able to do the whole thing, but they're really kind of dividing it into pieces and parts as they move forward.
And as I understand it, there's no golf carts allowed on that, is that correct?
No golf carts.
Okay.
So that means no motorized vehicles, then electric bikes, is that just a gray area, or?
That's a conversation that's been had for the last 8 years, and I know that the discussions are that the Ohio laws dictate speeds and what you're allowed to do on a bike path, is what I've been told. We don't want to necessarily post rules all over the place and clutter the pathway, but we're hoping that logic and common sense and common courtesy, which isn't as common as it once was, will prevail, and that people will understand that they need to use this as a multi-use path and that they shouldn't be taking motorized vehicles and speeding through there. I know in the past we've talked about, they do have the e-bikes and those types of things. They would be okay at slower speeds, but once they get to a high speed, that's when they start becoming dangerous and becoming problems. And we haven't seen that yet, like to a great extent. And the people that have done that have been compliant when stopped. So hopefully we can continue down that route and have those conversations. And as the full bike path comes online, then those conversations might be more prevalent.
I'm sure anybody dealing with bike paths has had to deal with all the above. So no updates on Lions Park erosion control study, causeways, wetlands, Jackson Street parking lot hotels. That just completely on hold, the Jackson Street parking lot hotel?
My understanding, those conversations are continuing with the developer, and there's an expectation there will be a development agreement that goes in front of City Commission when it's ready, but I don't know the timing of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
regarding Jackson Street parking lot, I kind of through the grapevine understand that there's some concern about, because things are on hold at the state, there's some concern about wasting that parking spot, the parking area, and possibly will be, I'll believe it when I see it, but maybe they'll be clearing that out until the project resumes so that we have use of that parking. But I don't know if staff knows anything about that.
I would say that there was conversation about that on the commission floor this past Monday. I don't know all of the exact details, timings, things like that, but I do know that there was conversation at the commission meeting.
So it's in the works possibly. Yeah.
There's at least discussions.
Enlighten us at all on?
Well, we were in an executive session, so.
Okay.
You know.
Got it. Mum's the
Uh,
word. We understand. I'm also curious about the Battery Park PUD. Is it? Are
Those
gears
conversations
grinding,
also
or-
continue. Yeah, I think they have till October to bring the final development plan to Planning Commission in their current timeline. But it sounds like they want to come forward earlier than that. I haven't seen a draft of that yet, but they said that they've been working with the architect to further the design. There's no significant changes, so it'll reflect what we've already seen. It's just more detail.
I'll say that, not related to the PUD necessarily, but since it's all one big project, there are discussions about updating the submerged land lease, making those modifications to accommodate different things. My understanding is that whatever modifications would be factored in with the submerged land lease, it's really at this time boundary adjustments more so than dictating exactly what's happening here and there. So those second conversations that would happen as part of the PUD might cause for another adjustment of that submerged land lease. Still trying to figure those out, but I did want everybody to be aware that that submerged land lease is possibly going to be on the next commission meeting for an adjustment of those physical boundaries.
Has there been a recent survey to determine, I'm wearing my Sandusky Sailing Club hat at the moment, to know where those lines lie?
So there was one piece of property that the city had under a submerged land lease, but it wasn't in either of the subleases with the sailing club or the battery park. So that one is looking to be put into the battery park submerged land lease because it didn't have anything. So I know those conversations, I don't know what the conversation exactly was between the developer and the sailing club, but I do know that the intent is to finally assign that one parcel. And it's kind of on the far east end. It's at the East Water Street pier, kind of extends, not the pier itself, but there's a little triangle piece out there. So the goal was to add that one to the battery park since it's not assigned. And the conversations with the sailing club I know have happened. The big thing is that the developer received some funding with support from the county, I believe, through the brownfields. And they're looking forward to moving those funds, putting those into play and getting started. So there's a lot of discussions with ODNR about what can happen, what can't happen, what they can do within the confines of the current sublease and what they can't do, and trying to adjust all those things and make sure that they're not doing anything outside of those boundaries and those requirements. Those conversations are certainly ongoing. The developer would like to get moving on some of that stuff, but it's all on hold until they get a final discussions with ODNR.
Thank you. Judy?
I know this is not on the agenda, but is there any update on what's happening at the State Theater when it might be open?
That was what I was referring to earlier. The city manager gave a brief report on that at the city commission meeting. I'm not familiar exactly with what's going on, but he did give a brief overview of what the stance is with it. So there was one other thing that's not on this agenda that I think would be good for this committee is, I don't know the exact time of it, maybe you do, but there is a ribbon cutting party event type thing for the skate park. That's May 10th. I don't know the time, but I'm sure it's going to be all over.
Okay.
I'm sure it's going to be all over social media, so everybody's invited. Love to have everybody out there.
Thank you.
One question. I understand there's no lights at the skate park. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was discussed as part of the design contract, but we did not have the funding to support lighting.
Are you planning on putting some in if you get more funding?
There's not plans in place right now, and there's a back and forth conversation. If you add light, then you add more people after dark, and if there's no light, then people aren't there after dark. So there's opposing views as to whether which is a good thing or not.
Okay.
I would, I'm sorry, I would add to that my understanding is that parks are supposed to close at dusk. So I believe that's still considered a city park. So unless we would sign that differently or do
Okay.
something with that.
I did not know that.
Sure.
Two questions. One about, I know you've talked to us before about the Causeway wetlands. And when I drove out there recently, I was a little bit surprised to see how much apparent land there is in what I think you described as an area that is solidifying or compressing or something. Is there more stuff that goes in on top of that as it compresses, or it just seems like a big field now and invites the question of how long is it just gated off to solidify, or what am I going to see happening over the next few months in that?
Yeah, our consultant was out there last week and they did a core sample to figure out how much it has consolidated within that northern cell. The southern cell has quite a bit of water in it. There's still about 15,000 cubic yards available, but we need that when we reconfigure it. So we're working very hard with ODNR, the Ohio EPA, various agencies to find federal funding to implement the final stage of that project, which would be to reconfigure it with a flow-through channel that would go from the northwest corner of it all the way through the entire cell. There's a lower lying area on the south side of it that acts kind of as a weir, an overflow weir if it gets too full. And that is where it would exit to the south. So what you're seeing there is still, unfortunately, we planted grass seed last fall or last spring, maybe, or sometime in '24. And not a lot of it took. It was supposed to be a native seed mix, and the geese really enjoyed it. So
Can't be surprised.
unfortunately, what took was a lot of the cottonwoods. So we're developing a plan to try to, even though they are native, get rid of as many of those as we possibly can, so that when we do move forward with a project that creates an actual wetlands and something that's more inviting for wildlife and the public, that we don't have to contend with 6-inch caliper trees and trying to get rid of those things. So, yeah, what you're seeing now is not necessarily the ideal situation, but it will change, and we will, once we get funding for that. Funding for these types of projects are a little harder to come by right now.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, sorry.
I had a second question, but it's to a different subject. I don't know if.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Well, this is on the same subject, if you want to.
I'll defer.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't think we should necessarily expect, I don't know what the public might expect, but I mean, mud flats are valid habitat. In fact, a shortage of mud flats for shorebirds. So, I mean, I don't think we should be concerned if there's in places that, because the water goes up and down, that would be about perfect for providing that sort of habitat. And we're not going to, I think you'll probably get some flow through, but it's not like you have a river or a stream creating something that would resemble a natural estuarial area. So it could be a little unique, but there's nothing wrong with, bare sand and mud for as habitat.
Yeah, and to that point, we still have about $600,000 under, that was under contract, and the total project cost is somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million. So we're trying to find that additional funding for the full project. But if we fail to find those funds, then we will go to a obviously more economical route, which could be doing exactly what you're talking about and creating more of a not a flow-through type of a wetlands, but another type of a wetlands that will have those wet and dry areas in it, creating habitat less for fish, but more for the amphibians and things like that. So it is an option. It's something that we don't necessarily want to do. We'd rather create that habitat for all species, but it's something that if we don't find the funding, we will have to call an audible and go that route. But it would still have native plantings. It won't be all cottonwood forest.
But will we ever be able to canoe or kayak through there, or is it going to be like pasture most of the time unless there's a storm surge?
So that's the point, is we're trying to get a flow through which would allow for non-motorized boats to go through there, or paddling type things. If we don't find the funding and the state wants to move forward with doing an enclosed one. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. If you do the flow through, you're essentially cutting out that exterior perimeter for anybody that might want to go out there and fish or things like that. If you leave it as a non-flow through, then you can really walk around the outside of it. You just can't get into the middle of it with a paddle. So
My other area of concern or curiosity, I guess more. Over on Toff's end of town, where they installed a bunch of big pipes recently, and I made a presumption that that was probably related to the flooding that was experienced there a year or so ago. But I didn't really understand, haven't seen much about that or anything about it, just observed it. I wondered how that design works, or what those pipes are, where they go to, and how that's going to affect that area, which is kind of low-lying.
For clarity, since we have pipes everywhere right now, are you on Venice or on Monroe or
Well,
Churchwell?
I think it's Venice, but it comes off the overpass down
Yeah,
into
okay.
that curve, and that's where that flooding was, as you went around
Yes.
the curve, between the curve and Toff's.
Yeah,
And the pipes were off to the right at that curve where the old road and the new road meet in that peculiar Y. They had the pipes stationed there. They were probably
Yeah.
at least 24-inch or.
so the flooding that you're referencing was, I believe, from the fall of '23. That was when there was significant rain events, the underpasses flood. We just couldn't, I mean, you can't design a system to handle that. So one of the things that happened at that time was the Humane Society had some issues. And there was flooding, not only where you're talking about south side of Venice, but also around the Humane Society, where the animals had to be evacuated for safety purposes. So what we realized was we did a little bit of an analysis, and with the railroad that kind of creates that northern barrier, we didn't have a real good outlet to take anything. So what the design was that you're referencing is those ponds that were created for the overpass when it was designed and constructed, they are designed for a 10-year rain event, which is typical. But we also realized that there was a large trunk storm sewer on Edgewater that flowed underneath the railroad, an outlet on the opposite side on the west side of Toff's property. And there was a lot of capacity remaining in that. So what we were able, God bless you.
Sure.
What we were able to do was install a relief sewer so that if there is a surcharge in those detention ponds, the sewer system that it's currently using is undersized for what is going through it. With the farm fields and everything in the county that come up, they create a lot of runoff and flood that area back through there. So basically what we're able to do is take, if the ponds surcharge, now they can drain to the west and to the east. So the main route will still be to the east, and if it gets high enough, then it'll go to the west, and it can go out that way. Plus, we installed some drainage on the south side, so those residents and property owners out there can also tie into it and put some yard drains in and get that flow off of their property as well. So it really has multi-purpose purposes to it, but that was the intent, and hopefully it works, and hopefully we never get a rain event like that and never have to use it, but if we do, then it's there.
Yeah, 100-year storms come around every few years now,
They
it
do.
seems like, so.
Chair. Dr. Coons.
Thanks. I was curious. That's interesting.
I have a few things to follow up on a question that Judy asked, and some concerns she had about lighting, right, at that skate park, because that would be a concern for me as well. And you gave me some information that I didn't know, that lights are to come off at dusk. Is this at all the parks? Is this at a particular place? Can you kind of clarify?
I guess when I would say that my understanding, I haven't confirmed this with the ordinances, but my understanding is that the parks are closed at dusk. Not that the lights go off or things like that, but they're supposed to be closed at dusk. I don't know if it's all of them, but I believe there are signs at several of them. I know there are quite a few places that the parks close at dusk. it doesn't mean that we're putting gates up and fences
Right.
and everything else and having people stand there and telling them to get out, but they're supposed to be closed at
Right,
that
right.
time.
Yeah, I appreciate the information. I was really curious about it though, because I know that I ride past J.C. Park, and I've often wondered, how long will those lights remain on, right? And I personally don't necessarily have a problem. I understand both sides, why, you don't want lights on, you want the park closed at a certain time. I get all that. But at the same time, there's almost like this idea that if you keep them on, you don't expect anybody to be there, but you have those lights on, they're gonna come out. And I don't have a problem with them being on to a certain extent and to a certain time. So I just think that consistency would be good, right? And I know this is something I'll follow up with our city manager on, but consistency is what, I'm always looking for. What is done at one park is done at all parks, particularly when it's a busy park. I see folks playing basketball and the kids playing basketball late at night. So I'm pretty sure they'd want to do the same thing with skating. So, but there probably should be a cutoff, a limit. I just don't know how you control that if you say it's supposed to be closed, and you know what I mean? So it's not a question necessarily for you to answer right now, but I just wanted you to know that I was.
Excuse me, on top of that, you have things like Dorn Park, or when kids are playing tennis, that sometimes matches run into dusk and you need lights on. The Sandusky Education Foundation is working on money for the tennis courts at the old American Crane building. And we've raised $200,000 for lights, and now the city says we're not putting lights in there. I don't see how you can do that. Just a comment. Mm-hmm.
Good questions about park times and when they should be lit.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if it's an aside, or I think it's pretty relevant. And by the way, being in a park when it's officially closed would be a trespass, and Ohio trespass laws are, if not draconian, Ohio takes its trespassing seriously. So you're talking like up to, I think, a first-degree misdemeanor. So, it's.
But I assume it's up to us to set
Right.
what trespassing is and what the time frame is. And
also,
Dr. Kuhn says if there's lights on, it's hard to keep people from playing basketball or
right.
skateboard park.
That's a big.
Or vandalizing.
All right.
Right.
Lights
But
are on, they're not going to do that.
what I want to say was that the lighting doesn't have to be the same all the time. So when the public is welcome, it could be one level, but it could be a lower level or more select level for law enforcement to patrol and that sort of thing. So you can signal these things. And I agree with the consistency thing, because the laws have to be understandable. You got to know what the rules are, and it should be clearly posted. But I'm also, everyone knows that I'm a proponent of dark sky rules, and unnecessary lighting or overly bright lighting is a big problem too. So I guess one of my biggest points here is lights don't have to be either on or off. It doesn't have to be black or white. There can be shades of gray. You can have more subdued lighting or more targeted lighting during certain times.
Anything else from this body or from our advisors? I see nobody here from the community.
Mr. Chair, move to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aaron, can I speak to you a minute?
Saying, Mr. Commissioner.